In the previous videos, we have created users and their passwords, authorities using user details service, user details manager, and this is the code that we have written. But do we know what is the relationship between all of them that Spring Security follows? No, we have not looked into that. Let's try to go and look into deep how these all user details service, user details manager, all are interlinked with each other. This is a slide that can help you in understanding how an user will be managed by Spring Security. We have all important interfaces and classes revolving around user management inside Spring Security. We know whenever we're dealing with authentication and authorization in any framework, we need user details or customer details who want to access our application. That's where we call it as user management in Spring Security. If you see the very bottom interface that we have is user details. User details is an interface which will define the schema or blueprint of the user that we are going to deal inside our application. It will have various methods like get password, get username, get authorities. Like all these are needed for my Spring Security framework to decide whether the given user is a valid user or not. Again, these are all abstract methods. Whatever user that we are going to create, schema which is specific to our framework, we have to make sure implementing these user details interface. And this interface has all the methods revolving around security, like I want the username, I want the password, authorities, I want to know whether the account is expired or locked or credentials expired, is the account is enabled or not. All such possible user related information is packed into an interface called user details inside our Spring Security. So user details is an interface, and these are all the abstract methods available inside this interface. Whenever we are trying to create our own user schema definition specific to our application, we have to make sure implementing this interface. Post that, we have user details service. So this is an interface again which have a single abstract method called load user by username. Ideally, most of the applications, they just wanted to validate whether the given user is present inside a database or an LDAP application or inside an memory of my Spring Security container. So in all such scenarios, we just pass username to this abstract method that we are receiving from the UI, and this method will have a logic of fetching the user details from the database or LDAP server or from the memory of the Spring container. So user details is an interface which have a logic of fetching the user from the database or any other place, and the return type of load user by username is user details, because whenever we are dealing with users, we decided to use user details schema adhering to the Spring Security. Once we have user detail service, we also have user details manager, which again extends this interface. So user details manager is an interface which again extends user details service, followed by where this user details service will use this user details as a schema to maintain the user data. The primary difference between user details service and user details manager interface is user details service will be using only in the scenario where I have a requirement to only fetch the user details from the database or any other place. In such scenarios, we straight away go and use user detail service by implementing it and customizing as per our requirement. But if your application have a requirement to also maintain the user details, that I want to create user, I want to update, delete, change passwords along with fetching the user details, in such scenarios we have to make sure we are customizing by implementing user details manager. So since user details manager has extending this user details service also, that means along with these methods, it also inherit load user by username. The user details manager handles everything like maintaining the users, fetching the username, where user details service will only have method called load user by username, which will fetch the data. And at the same time, Spring Security provided three famous user details manager implementations. So whatever you are seeing in the top, all these are classes and they are default implemented by Spring Security framework itself by leveraging or by extending, implementing this user details manager interface. In-memory user details manager we already seen in the last videos, where it maintains the users, it will create the user, fetch the users from the memory of the Spring container. That's why we call it as in-memory user details manager. At the same time, ideal way of maintaining the users will be in the database. In such scenarios, whether you are MySQL, Oracle or MongoDB, wherever you are saving your user details, we will go and use already implemented class which is JDBC user details manager. And at the same time, if you have a requirement where the users are maintained on an LDAP server, we will go ahead and use the LDAP user details manager class in our application. But again, these are all provided by Spring Security. We are free to use them as per requirements. But at any scenario, if these three classes are not matching with our requirement, we are free to go and implement this user details manager and override all these methods as per requirements. So now we have seen enough of theory. Let's try to go and see each component by component which is revolving around user management inside the framework and try to do some hands-on in our application also. Hope this is making sense to you, and I can assure you these things will make more sense in the coming videos. Thank you and bye.